What's up, everybody? Welcome into a game day edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. My name is Andy Herman. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to be going over my 3 keys to victory today for the Green Bay Packers. Hopefully they can get this season started off right with a 2-0 start, 2-0 in the division, and a win at Lambeau Field. Really looking forward to today's game. I think it's going to be a really interesting affair. I think Detroit's going to give Green Bay a little bit more trouble than Minnesota did a week ago. Detroit has not been an easy opponent for Green Bay through the course of the last few seasons. Gave them everything that they could have handled, even with David Blau at quarterback to end the season last year. So I expect Detroit's going to hang in tough. I do think Green Bay ends with a victory, but what I'm watching for early and often in this game are going to be these 3 keys, and I'm going to start off with one that maybe you weren't expecting me to say, and that's figuring out how to stop Detroit's offense. Now that may seem a little bit weird, especially with Kenny Galladay out. It's not like the Lions are this amazing high-powered attack, but I do think Kenny Clark's absence changes this game in a variety of different ways. Even if Kenny Clark's in there, let's be real, the Green Bay run defense has not exactly been stellar going back to the end of last season or even early in that game against Minnesota until they had to kind of get away from the run and throw the ball around a little bit more. But this is a run defense that still concerns me even with Kenny Clark. It concerns me even more with no Kenny Clark. And then you add in the fact that Adrian Peterson consistently beats up on Green Bay, even when he was in Washington, especially when he was in Minnesota. He's always difficult to play against. I just think that Green Bay is going to have to figure out what they want to focus on and what they want to take away. If Green Bay is not able to stop Adrian Peterson and DeAndre Swift in that Detroit Lions run game, then they're going to potentially have to bring up an extra player in the box, probably an Adrian Amos, play with 8 in the box, and then that leaves Matthew Stafford with one-on-ones on the outside. Now again, Kenny Galladay being out could be a major advantage here for Green Bay, but they still have Quintez Cephus, who I think is going to be ending the season with a really nice rookie year. He showed some flash last week. I really do think they've found a player in him, and I think him and Marvin Jones still have the opportunity to be difficult for those Green Bay corners if they have to cover them one-on-one because they had to drop another safety into the box. So if Green Bay cannot stop Adrian Peterson in that Detroit run game early in the game, that would give me concern that, again, they're going to have to put more resources into the box, and that's going to allow Matthew Stafford, who to me is still a very underrated quarterback and still beat you with his arm in any given game. If you give him one-on-ones on the outside, even with maybe lesser receivers, I think Green Bay is going to have to figure out how they can kind of pick their poison between those two if and when Adrian Peterson in that run game gets going. So that's what I'm looking for. First of all, it's going to be a huge game for Dean Lowry and potentially Willington Prevalon, who they pulled up from the practice squad. It's going to be a huge game for Montravius Adams if he's active, Tyler Lancaster, Kingsley Keke. Matt LaFleur didn't really hold anything back this week in his press conference, basically saying he did not think that was the best showing from his defensive line. I thought the exact same way. All of those guys that were active last week, Kingsley Keke, Dean Lowry, Tyler Lancaster, they all graded in the negative for me. Kenny Clark was the only one that graded in the positive. This is a major area of concern for me going into this game because, again, if they can't stop the run, now you have to commit more resources. Now you're giving Matt Stafford one-on-ones on the outside, and you don't want to be in that situation where you have to kind of pick your poison a little bit. That being said, I do think Green Bay still has an advantage here. Even if Adrian Peterson in that run game does get going, and even if they do have to bring an extra safety up in the box, I still think Green Bay has outs here, and I do think the way that you want Detroit to have to beat you is with Matthew Stafford throwing and using his arm, rather than just letting Detroit pick up 4 or 5 yards per carry time after time if that's the way things are going. I think you give yourself more of an opportunity for Jair and Kevin King to shut down Marvin Jones and Quintez Cephus and that Detroit Lions wide receiver group, sans Kenny Galladay. That's why I think that injury is so big for Detroit, and I think that's where you start. And I think it also gives you a puncher's chance with Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary in that front group to get more pressure and try to beat the Detroit Lions, who are also without Joe Dahl, their starting left guard, and are likely to be without Big V, their big free agent signing at right tackle that they got over from the Philadelphia Eagles. So I do think the injuries are going to play a major part, but I do think Green Bay is going to have to focus on how they stop the run early and often, because again, even with those advantages with some of those injuries, I just don't think you want to get into a pick your poison where Detroit can kind of dictate and figure out where they want to attack, because you have to address and put more players up in the box. Number two is I think Green Bay has to focus on making sure that Davante Adams doesn't get taken away and have a plan if Detroit does go into a defense where they really make sure that Davante doesn't beat them. And Matt Patricia comes from the Bill Belichick coaching tree, and if you know anything about Bill Belichick, you know that he will always take away your best option on offense and not allow you to beat him consistently with that player. He's done it for years, and I would fully expect Matt Patricia to go into this game fully realizing that they cannot let Davante Adams do to the Detroit Lions what he did to the Minnesota Vikings a week ago. Easier said than done. Davante is one of the best in the game for a reason, and that may mean that they have to, use additional resources, maybe a corner and a safety over the top a lot more than they would like. They don't have Darius Slay anymore. It's going to be rookie Jeff Okudah that could be matched up with him quite a bit, or second-year player Amani Oruwariye. Those are two matchups that Green Bay is going to love. But again, if they're doubling him, if they're making sure they take him away, it's going to be up to Allen Lazard and Marquez Valdes-Scantling and the tight ends to get going, because you can guarantee that Patricia and Detroit's going to have a plan for Davante Adams that likely looks a lot better than the one Minnesota had last week. And that really leads into my third and final takeaway and my key to the game, and that's to get Aaron Jones going. For all that Green Bay did great on offense last week, it never really felt like Aaron Jones in the running game got into a great rhythm. He mentioned this week in a press conference that he is not a rhythm running back, that he doesn't need a specific amount of carries to get going, which we basically know, because if you remember earlier in his career, he didn't get a ton of carries, still made a huge impact. That's where we were back in the why isn't Aaron Jones getting more carries days, which never made any sense. But I do think they have to have a plan for him to get him going, whether it be in the passing game, whether it be in the running game. He made it, uncharacteristically, made a couple bad reads in the run game last week. He had some holes, didn't always take advantage of them, did have the touchdown late in the game against Minnesota, but I think this is a situation where you really want to get Aaron Jones going early and often. I think he can kind of carry that offense, especially in the situation where maybe a Davante Adams is a little bit of an extra focal point for the Lions. So would love to see Aaron Jones get going because, again, spectacular football player who can do great things. I just want to see him get a little bit more in a rhythm. Want to see him maybe get closer to that 20 touches, hopefully over 100 yards total, whether that be rushing or receiving, doesn't matter. But I just think he needs to make a real impact in the game tomorrow. So to recap, make sure that, you've got a plan to stop Detroit's offense, even if that means committing an extra man in the box. Make sure that Davante Adams doesn't get totally taken away, and if he does, make sure that you have plans outside of that. And then also, you want to make sure that Aaron Jones gets going early and often. I think if Green Bay can do those three things, they're going to have a huge opportunity to win. I think the great thing is that even if a couple of those things go wrong, they have, home field, even without the fans, still home field tomorrow. They've got an offense look great a week ago, and I think they have more outs to potentially win this game, even if a couple of those things don't go their way. I like Green Bay to win this game, go to 2-0. Matt LaFleur moves to 8-0 in the division. Would be a great way to start the season. Hopefully they can avoid some more injuries this week. It would be nice if they could stay healthy coming out of the game for once, but those are the three keys that I'm looking for. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to check out Mike, Gage, and Tyler on the full episode of the Pack-A-Day podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. But that does it for me. Go Pack Go, on to 2-0. I'll talk to you soon.